Hi, welcome to Canadian music in the 80s and 90s and more, eh? Today we've got a different kind of video. We're going to talk about guitars, in particular the maintenance and repair and maybe more about what it takes to have a guitar with a guitar luthier, Joe Ellis of Prince Edward Island.
Hey.
And your company is called Joe Ellis Guitarworks?
J. Ellis Guitarworks.
J. Ellis Guitarworks. How long have you been doing this?
I've been a professional luthier for about 5 years now, 5.5, give or take. Before that, I was just tinkering with my own family's friends, instruments. Probably about 10, 12 years, something like that. So I've been doing this for quite a while, on and off, and it's been a super fun ride so far. Around 2018, 2019, I started getting a bit of that itch to maybe I should go do this professionally. Maybe I should go learn how to do this properly, And I did a lot of research, did a lot of studying, and eventually arrived at a luthier by the name of David Freeman at Timeless Instruments, and he is a fantastic luthier. He's a master luthier. He's been doing it for decades, and very, very good at what he does. He's just he's one of the at the time, and he was one of the few credited courses in country, or in Canada, the country, where you could go and get certified to train and be a luthier professionally. So I figured that was a really good deal. Great price, great experience. The amount of skills and knowledge that you learn with him while you're there is just unbelievable. So if you ever want to learn how to go do it, go talk to David Freeman. He's one of the best you could go to for that.
So is there any job too big or too small? You work on acoustics and electrics. I can see behind you, you have a neck of a bass guitar, but it looks a bit taken off of the bass. So yeah, it looks like you're pretty much up for any challenge somebody brings your way.
Yeah, there's a mandolin up here as well that's broken in half. So if they're willing to put the time and effort into getting it fixed, sentimental value goes into it as well. Sometimes stuff is just maybe a little on the cheap side. It might not be worth it if there's no attachment to the instrument, but stuff like that where it's been in the family for years and years, despite being a relatively cheap instrument, I'll fix anything as long as it's actually fixable. Sometimes you get stuff that's basically firewood. It's just shattered into pieces. You can fix it, but it might not be that great at the end, right?
Is it worth fixing?
Yeah, it depends on the person. If it means so much to them, yes, absolutely, it's worth fixing pretty much anything. But yeah, sometimes the price for it can definitely get beyond that value, and I try to be reasonable with all that stuff. So stuff like that, obviously that's essentially a rebuild. You're restoring that mandolin, from a pretty dire state into something that's going to be pretty playable.
Right.
Worth it in this case. Whereas I've had super cheap guitars, somebody that they got it for $50 at a yard sale. Maybe not so worth it at that point, right? If it needs something like a neck reset, for example.
Right.
Very expensive, very major surgery kind of repair. You might want to spend the money and just go get a really nice guitar at that point.
Right.
So. Anything's fixable though. If you want to put the time and effort into it, just depends on how much you care about the guitar.
Is it hard to find parts?
It can be, depending on what it is. There are obviously newer stuff that's going to be a little bit more readily available. More vintage stuff like that mandolin. If I wanted to replace the tuners on it, I'm going to have to retrofit it with something new, because they don't make those tuners anymore, and they haven't for quite some time, right? Or I could maybe find new old stock if I'm lucky. Or worst comes to worst, if you're working on something that's a bit more unique, your hands are kind of tied in that situation. It's either deal with what you have or make a new one, which can be a bit of a process sometimes. But as a luthier, you should be able to make and replace all the parts on the instruments that you're working on if need be.
So you can actually make parts if you had to. Like I see
Oh,
down
yeah.
here behind your chair, you have like some kind of wood shape. Is that like an actual part you're making for a guitar, or?
No, this is what we call a guitar board or maker's board.
Okay.
Basically, you put the guitar on the board itself,
Right.
or the on the board, and this allows you to make a wide variety of different sizes. So the inner part here, this would be a little bit smaller than a parlor size guitar.
Right.
But the bigger, the bigger you get, you get all these different size lengths of these pieces of wood jutting out here. It goes out to a jumbo.
Okay.
So when you're making the guitar, for example, you can take this Martin and put it up here. The guitar would be like this as you're
Okay.
making it. You build it upside down,
Okay.
and you got when you're putting everything together, top goes on first, neck glues into the top, sides go into the heel, kind of thing. Back goes on last, and you rope everything off, and you use these parts to have the rope go around and
Right.
under. Gives you something to loop onto,
Right.
basically. But yeah, it is quite a process if you're getting into that stuff.
Yeah. And is it quite a lengthy process depending what kind of job you're doing? Like what would you say takes the longest to do and not as much time to do, like on both spectrums, I guess?
Setups and repairs can usually be pretty quick.
So like strings, like new strings? and-
Yeah, new strings, setups, basic maintenance stuff. That's not too bad. It usually takes a few hours. Depends how dirty it is too. Like some people don't want their instruments cleaned at all. They want to just keep it as is,
Right.
build up that mojo over time,
Yeah.
It can be kind of gross sometimes. Some people like that. It's fine. But like something like this wouldn't need much cleaning at all. This is pretty much a new guitar. So
It's in pretty solid shape already.
yeah, exactly. So you're just polishing it at that point, right?
Yeah.
So that wouldn't take very long. Whereas other guitars I've had in the shop, it takes hours to clean them sometimes.
Right.
So it can get pretty gnarly sometimes. But yeah, that's usually the quick stuff, just your basic bread and butter kind of thing. Setups, repairs, cleanings, basic repairs, I should say, because that's technically a repair, and that's going to take a while.
Yeah.
That mandolin's full rebuild. So, but yeah, you get into more complicated stuff. Like if you need to do a neck reset, that's going to take hours and hours of work, right?
Right.
Like, that's going to be most of your week. Not counting, finish repairs that you have to do in the corners and all that stuff.
Right.
To get it all back together.
And do you ever have to replace a whole neck, like order a whole neck in, like you've got with that bass guitar back
Yeah.
there, or is that something you just took off an existing guitar? Or?
Yeah, this is for a different project. This is for it's a P bass, obviously, and we're replacing the neck with this new one, and the reason for that is when you have your neck ideally doing what it's supposed to do, it's going to be relatively flat.
Right.
And when the strings are on, it's going to pull the neck into just a really subtle forward curve, right?
Right.
Not much at all to it. There's barely any space between the strings and the frets. When you're, you check it, you hold it down at certain frets. But on this other bass, or the bass this is going to be for, the other neck has developed a bit of a ski slope on the end.
Okay.
Which is not great.
So is that just a warping problem? Like
Yeah, it's kind of luck of the draw with that stuff. It doesn't happen on everything. Most things it doesn't happen to, thankfully. But pretty much the only fix for it is to take the frets off, level the fretboard, cut the slots for
Right.
get the frets back in, do a fret level. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Whereas you could just go get a new neck for I think it was $150, and screw some holes into it,
Right.
put some finish on it. It's super simple, right? Way cheaper than doing all that, and these are pretty much perfect right out of the box.
Now, what would, for anyone that doesn't know much about guitars, or just has one, what would cause the warping of a neck like that to have it replaced? Like, is it temperature or where you store it, or?
Yeah, depends on the cut of the wood. We tend to use a lot of quarter sawn cuts of wood,
Right.
which I believe I have one here. Might be able to see it a little better with spruce board. Yeah, so these are bracing boards, but quarter sawn is just, the grain is vertical.
Right.
And it's way stronger vertically. Like you can't break that. It's super strong. So we use that for necks. We use it for fretboards. We use it for bridges.
Right.
Tops and backs as well. Everything pretty much. So that helps prevent warping. And then obviously, sealing the wood, getting some finish on it.
Yeah.
It all helps. Everything to help stabilize it. Certain little things, where it's like on necks like this, you want to kind of build a little bit of a extra reinforcement right there.
Right.
Some people put a volute on there. Like I think this Martin might have one actually. No, it does not. But it's usually just a decorative little point. It's to add extra stability in there, right? Because this is kind of your weakest part of the neck. So there's little things you can do like that to help stabilize everything. Give it a bit more of a better chance to not have issues over time, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot of it. The main thing comes down to humidity, cold, all that stuff, right? Heat. You want everything to be generally pretty consistent, climate-wise. So, like for example, if it's relatively warm and dry down here in the winter, if I take the guitar outside, it's going to shock it.
Yeah.
The cold is instantly going to make the water molecules in the guitar, all that humidity is going to either shrink or expand with the climate. And you can hear it, you can actually test it. You can strum a chord and walk outside and your guitar will do that.
Right.
It'll noticeably go down or up. And that's the physics part of that, where it's just immediately changing what your guitar is doing. So if you're traveling, touring or whatever, you should probably know how to adjust that stuff and counter it, because your guitar is not going to survive very long if you don't, or not play very well, I should say. But,
I've noticed in music stores, they keep acoustic guitars in a room that is very humid and warm, actually, because I sweat a lot when I go in and try and play one. And that's the reason for that.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Especially, those are usually the more expensive guitars, the acoustics especially. You have to with those. If they're not being taken care of, like the cracks can open up, splits can open up in the top, or anywhere really, if it's dry enough. Glue can let go. Top can kind of sink in occasionally. If it's built right, it shouldn't, but it can happen. Bridges can start to tilt and let go over time if it gets dry enough. If the neck isn't, if you're not keeping an eye on it, the neck can creep forward just constantly, and it gets bad enough so as it comes forward, your strings will rise with it, and it just becomes unplayable over time, right?
Right.
So you constantly have to keep an eye on that.
And that's stuff you can deal with and repair if need be?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of it's just a truss rod adjustment, if it's creeping forward, tighten it. If it's starting to get a little bit of a, too straight or a bit of a back bow, maybe loosen the truss rod a little bit so it's not fighting as hard against the strings. Does
the finish on the guitar make a difference in whether it warps easily or whether does it help protect from the elements at all?
It can, yeah.
Like the finish on this, would this help protect from the elements quite a bit?
Yeah, if this was, say, like a super thin oil finish or a matte finish, those are more, like, it does protect the guitar, but not in the sense that it's like, damage.
Right.
Matte finishes and oil finishes are pretty sensitive, especially when they're relatively new. They're not going to protect against dings and scratches and dents and all that stuff.
Right.
They're going to go into the wood. And it still seals it, though. So you're still getting the same performance for humidity and climate changes and all that. But for this, thicker the finish is, gloss finish has to be a bit thicker than the others because you got to polish it. And, this would definitely be more protective than, say, an oil finish or a matte finish. This, they probably spray about 10 coats, sand it, get it all buffed out, and it's quite a bit thicker. Whereas with especially matte finishes, you kind of just spray on a coat or two, and you get what you get.
Right.
It can be pretty thin, let's put it that way, and it's really difficult to repair those. So
the other question I have, being the somewhat of a master guitar repair person, because I think a lot of people come to you here in PEI because, I mean, I was recommended to you from Long and McQuaid, so you obviously have an idea what you're doing and have a name for yourself here on the island because you're keeping quite busy. When you buy a guitar, my personal favorite would be a Southern Jumbo Gibson, and they're like $7,000 for the Gibson one, but there is an Epiphone version which is considerably cheaper. What would the big difference be to make such a price difference? Well, is it the name, or is it the way they're actually built?
It's a few different smaller. There's a bunch of variants that go into it, variables. It's going to be wood selection. That's a big one. That's your upfront costs. You know, a master grade top that you'd find on like a Southern Jumbo or something like that. That's like right out of the Gibson custom shop.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to cost a fortune just for the boards alone. You know, or the top plates and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just rarity at that point. It's not even necessarily that the wood is better. It's just it's really, really nice and consistent wood.
Yeah.
Tonally, you can generally get, you know, pretty close sounds out of all of them, depending on how you build them.
Right.
A good luthier will be able to get great sounds out of any piece of wood generally. Some aren't great, but you know how to manipulate the wood to get it to do what you want it to. Whether that's thicknessing or where you place the braces, all that stuff, right? All the voicing. Brand name is definitely a big part of it as well. You know, there's a lot of guitars over the years I've played where you know, it might have a reputable name on the headstock, and they're incredible instruments. And then you pick up the same model, different guitar, and it doesn't sound as great. You know,
Right.
So to me, it can be a little frustrating dealing with all that stuff because there is a lot of like, oh, it's this guitar, it has to sound good. It's this guitar. Why would it not sound good, right? Whereas the reality is they all don't sound great. You know, they all don't play great. A good guitar is a good guitar in my eyes. I don't care what's on the headstock. If it plays and sounds great, it's a good guitar.
Right.
You know. That's my whole thing. I might be a little bit privileged and in a different situation though, because I'm not looking for, oh, this is a great guitar right out of the box. I can make it play great. You know, I can.
You have the knowledge to do adjustments to it.
I can buy a $100 guitar and make it play like a $5,000 guitar if I want to, right? So not everybody has that privilege, obviously, and not everybody's going to want to put that much time and effort into a cheaper guitar too.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to be, you know, choices of woods, the brand name, some of the build quality, some of the features they put in.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it like finer things like the pegs, the bridges, and what you use and stuff like that, like and pick guards and inlays and stuff like that?
This is, you know, a triple rosette, so that's triple the time to get that in. That's going to be extra work and man hours. You got purfling and binding here. Sometimes it's just the white binding on the outside.
Right.
It's on both sides.
Right.
You got 2 back strips.
Yeah.
Everything's all nice and mitered together. Just you know, amazing craftsmanship, really high quality woods.
Yeah. The finish is incredible.
Yeah. This would cost a lot of money purely just because of all that.
And then stuff up there on the end, like, is that like the tuning pegs are probably better quality than most guitars?
Oh yeah, definitely. These are really nice ones. But yeah, what are these? Grovers. Yeah, they are very nice. But yeah, a lot of that can be personal taste too. And then on top of that, there's sort of you know, aftermarket parts, I guess you could say. Right. Where if you want to take it even further, you know, this is the nice Martin stuff, you know, for example. But if I wanted to install, like, I don't know, like a set of like Goto 510s, you know, those things are like $250 these days, I think. Really, really nice tuners. Right. Are they worth it for the quality? I would probably say so. But it really just depends on what you want. Because when you're getting into that stuff, it's the feel. How nice does it feel to turn? How accurate is the tuning? Does it stay in tune? All that stuff. There's so, you know, you can get into ratio tuners where they have different amounts of teeth for the gears. Right. Because when you're turning your low E string it's not going to be the same level of turn that gets the same amount of tune, your note going up as your high E will.
Yeah.
So the ratio tuners make that all feel the same.
Okay.
Slower would be a little bit better. You have to turn it a bit more to get where you're going.
Yeah.
That would be a better tuner. But in the grand scheme of things, if it stays in tune, it stays in tune.
Yeah.
They're no-name locking tuners on my guitar right there.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what they are. I took them to a shop forever ago to get them put on. I just said I want locking tuners. I don't know what they put on them. There's no name anywhere, and they've been working great for 15 years. you know? And I think back then he charged me like $70 for them, and that's pretty good by today's standards. So if it works, it works.
Now, in terms of, I've also heard stuff about how some of the big companies are mass producing guitars now, not like they used to make. Like, how many there's a few companies that just make them as they need them, like handcrafted guitars, whereas a lot of them are machine produced and in a factory of some kind. Do you think that affects the quality now, but compared to what it used to be back in the day?
Yeah, this is kind of getting into the whole like handmade versus factory made stuff, because the factory made stuff is perfect. Like from a dimensions point of view, like all the tops are the exact same thickness. They're going to be routing or CNCing in a lot of cases. Everything. The bridges are identical every single time because they're getting a machine to do it, right? Yeah. Whereas if you're doing it by hand, there might be like, this side might be a little bit lower. There might be like a little sanding scratch or something.
Right.
It's hard to compare them in terms of quality, because handmade doesn't always mean perfect, because it's really hard to get machine perfect if you're not a machine, right? But yeah, the machining part of it speeds it up in a lot of cases. Maybe not so much the handwork, because even when they're mass producing things with machines and CNCs and all that stuff, they still have to do a lot by hand. For like Gibsons, for example, when they spray those gold tops on the Les Pauls, they still have to come in with a scraper and clean all the binding up, get all the gold off.
Right.
And you know what they do when they make a mistake? They sand it all off and start over.
Really?
It has to be perfect by hand.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not up to their standards of quality. So
you can't totally 100% machine it. There's still some things that have to be done individually.
Yeah, like you could probably machine out the braces and then get them glued on and then carve them by hand the rest of the way. You got to glue the bridge on, obviously, by hand. Put it together by hand.
Right.
You could machine the neck out once the scarf joint and all that stuff is glued in there.
Right.
But to actually take it the rest of the way for the proper feel, the machine doesn't really know how to do that.
No.
Not yet, anyway. Yeah. Maybe in the future. So they take the feel of it the rest of the way. Like I've seen guys like Mike Shannon at the Jackson Custom Shop. He's a master luthier as well. Take rather than just get it to a certain profile that this would be I believe it's C-shape for Martins. I can't remember honestly.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, they would make those Jackson necks that profile.
Okay.
And then he'll take a piece of sandpaper in his hand like he's playing, and he'll just sand it in.
Oh, up and down the neck.
So it feels warm, but it's brand new.
Yeah.
Like that's a nice little touch you can do, and when you're getting into custom, USA made or USA made, like luthier made, I should say, kind of things, you can do whatever you want. Like my first acoustic that I made, I recarved the neck on it twice after building it, because the first time I made it, I didn't really know what I was doing. If you're feeling things without the strings on it and there's no finish, and you think, okay, yeah, that feels okay. And then you get strings on it, and it's kind of like, oh no, what did I do? It just feels like a baseball bat, right? So, first guitar, learning process, right? So I recarved the neck second time just to bring everything down, get a nice tight profile on it, and still wasn't super happy with it. So I recarved it a second time, and on my guitar, it's a D profile on this side. So if you want to do your thumb hang, kind of playing. It's got a bit of meat to it, you know. It feels comfy. Gibson players would like that.
Yeah.
It has a really subtle V down the center.
Right.
You know, if you want to have that certain sort of like vintage feel to it,
Yeah.
that is there if you want it. And then on the treble side of the neck, it's a C shape.
Yeah.
So if you want to have your thumb on the back of the neck,
Right.
everything feels nice and comfy there because it's not a D profile pushing your thumb out and you get all that pressure right here, right? Everything feels comfy depending on how you want to play it. I'm sure there's other players that have done stuff like that in the past.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it myself. I also haven't looked into it super deeply either. I'm sure somebody's done it as well, but it's unique. It's that kind of level of just feature, you know. It doesn't have to just be a D shape or a C shape. You can do literally whatever you want.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't interfere with the...
Everybody has a different preference depending what level of guitar player you are.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big part of being a luthier as well, especially if you're doing setups and building and all that.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where, especially if you're building, what is the person playing? What kind of music are they playing? How do they play it, you know? Do they have any preferences? Do they like the big old school vintage guitars? Do they like the more modern approaches?
Right.
You know, what kind of taper in the width of the fretboard do they like? What kind of neck profile do they like? How should you voice the guitar? Are they playing just your standard cowboy chords?
Yeah.
Or you know, are
you a bluegrass player that's all over the place?
Are they a little bit more melancholy, right?
Right.
Is it something like that, or is it just, you know, chords?
Yeah.
You have to take all that into account when you're playing or when you're building and setting things up, especially because some people know exactly what they want.
Yeah.
They're very, very picky, and you have to be able to deliver that.
That's a big part of being a luthier, is knowing what they mean when, you know, understanding their needs.
Yeah, the language is a big part of it as well. The amount of people I run into that you know, they might call me and say, "Oh, I'm having issues with my bridge. My bridge broke," and what they mean is the saddle. But they don't know it's called the saddle. Right?
The white part.
Yeah.
Is that ivory or is that plastic on most guitars now? Probably a bit of both.
It's usually bone.
Is it? Okay.
It can be plastic for sure. That's definitely pretty common these days. But vocabulary is a big thing. So I have a tech background, so I did a lot of customer service stuff, right? So when I was doing that, you have to take a really holistic approach because not everybody uses the same language, right? Like you say, "Oh, my computer is having this issue," and they don't know how to express that in an accurate way. They're going to tell you the best way they can. Right. You should be using the same language or correct.
Understand their language.
Yeah. If it needs to be corrected, give them the right verbiage so that they can communicate with you properly, right? You got to be able to pick up on that on the fly, and if they call it the thingy, maybe just call it the thingy. It might be faster and easier.
Some people don't know the actual term for it.
But. Yeah, and there's a lot of weird things with guitars, like the rosette around the sound hole, the volute on the back of the neck, the tantallones on the inside for the lining, like the purfling and kerfing, and
And we haven't even touched on electrics with all the electronics built inside of it, the pickups and the wiring and stuff like that.
That's a whole other nightmare to deal with. That's I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not an electronic expert by any means. I can do the electronics work, but some guys just revel in that stuff. They're more electronic engineers than they are luthiers.
Like a guy like Eddie Van Halen, who used to just rip the guitars apart and change necks and rewire things. And like I've heard things about him having one of the dials or the tone things, not even controlling tone, it controls volume. And
exactly.
I've heard all kinds of crazy stories.
You can do whatever you want. It's funny you mention that too, because a lot of people don't realize that Eddie was a luthier. He's so famous for his guitar playing and just wizard when it comes to lead playing, right? But people don't realize that he designed most of, pretty much everything he's used his whole career. It didn't matter if he had a signature guitar through like Hamer or whatever. He designed it and they made it, and then he modified the hell out of it again when they gave it to him. Like that the shark tooth crazy guitar with the weird metal bit in between the wings on the back. Like that's not the way the guitar was when they handed it to him. It's just a lot of stuff like that.
A lot of trial and error stuff he used to do too. Just
Yeah.
like, and he had a shop in there where he was just.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of his shop where he had like.
Oh yeah, I've seen his garage where he's just got guitars all over the place, and they're all in various states of being modified and trying different things. And you know, one of the more famous things that he came up with was Floyd Rose whammy bars.
Right.
How notorious they are for just, you got to get them set up right. They will stay in tune forever, but getting them to that point can take a bit of work.
Yeah.
And God forbid you change the tuning or do anything to it.
Right.
Know? You set it and you leave it like that until you want to do another setup to change it to something else, right?
Would that be the reason when you see concerts, they'll just sit there and change guitars? Every guitar has a different tuning when they bring it out there. So it's like, I don't want to mess up the tuning on this thing, so I'll just get another one with the tuning I want on it and just...
And backups, and things can go wrong live, or I don't really like the feel of this right now, give me another one. But one thing that Eddie came up with was he calls it the D-Tuna bridge, where it's for your for a Floyd Rose, or actually I can go grab one real quick here. Just give me a second.
Sure.
Because I have one. It's this guitar. This is just a Floyd Rose special. So
right. Oh, okay. Yeah, with the whammy bar.
So obviously this is looks complicated to set up, because it can be.
Yeah.
It's not so bad once you get into it, but it just takes time and effort. It's you got to dial everything in quite a few times and then get it to stay stable, right?
Right.
But when you're this is just E standard, but if you want to change the tuning, you have to set up the whole guitar again.
Really?
Because the bridge has to be balanced. This has to be relatively, parallel with the plane of the top.
Yeah.
And if you lower the tuning, it's going to want to do that.
Right.
And if you, raise the tuning, like if you're in a lower tuning, you go up to E standard, it's going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's going to screw up your motion of your whammy bar, your sort of range of motion. But yeah, they're really finicky. They're really hard to set up if you don't know what you're doing. But the one thing that Eddie came up with was he calls it the D-Tuna, where it's this little locking thing that goes on the back here. It replaces this this screw here that holds the saddle in place. And all it is, it's like a latch lock almost. It's just you pull it out and loosen it, and it automatically tunes your guitar down to drop D.
Oh, really?
Without setting up your whole guitar again. It just and it keeps it in tune. And that's by far, I think, one of the coolest things he's ever come up with.
Yeah.
Because it saves you hours and hours of work, and you can put it back in E standard just as quick.
Really?
Really, really cool feature. So, but yeah,
and you can put it on any electric guitar, pretty much.
Anything with a Floyd, they're specific to Floyd Roses. But he's come up with so much stuff like that over the years. And people just don't think about it because he's Eddie the guitar player, right?
Right.
He's not Eddie the luthier, even though he was.
Yeah.
So
crazy stuff. But I mean, he was one of those guys that made the guitar look so easy.
Oh yeah.
Like you watched him play, and it was like effortless for him. That's how much he played, and that's how.
Oh yeah.
And there's guys like Stevie Ray Vaughan comes to mind when I think of guys like that. They just play so much, they make it look like they're just breathing.
and when you get into like their setups and from a luthier point of view, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because especially like Eddie was using I think 9s or 10s on his guitar, which is pretty standard, strings.
Right.
But Stevie Ray Vaughan was using like 12s, 13s for like I think it was E flat, if I remember correctly.
Right.
But E standard early on, and that like. From a luthier point of view, that's like, God, those strings must be they feel like cheese graters, and they're super, super tense, right? The heavier they are, the higher you tune, the more likely they're going to break.
Right.
So when you get into bending strings, the tighter and heavier they are, doing that gets harder.
Yeah.
So he's using 13s at some point later in his career, and he's still doing these like gigantic bends, and it's like, God,
he must have destroyed his fingers.
Oh yeah, I mean, like just that alone, I got marks on my fingers just from that, right? So imagine that, but way worse.
Because he's doing it constantly. He's not just
Oh, yeah.
playing once a week or even just
or,
fooling around.
or you get guys like Zach Wilde from Ozzy's band. There.
Right.
He's notorious for super wide vibrato when he's playing.
Yeah.
And he does it constantly for hours on end. Like he's playing guitar for hours before the show. He'll play the show, and then he'll play guitar after the show.
Yeah.
just loves playing guitar, right? But yeah, like at a certain point, your fingers just kind of turn into like stone.
Yeah.
You don't even feel it, you know.
Yeah. It's conditioning yourself, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And it takes a long time to get to that condition.
Yeah, and you get the endurance built up to physically be able to do that as well without it you know, causing too many issues. But there is a point though, because I read some interviews with Stevie Ray Vaughan and his techs and stuff later in his life, where he was kind of thinking maybe I should dial things back just a little bit.
Yeah.
This is like getting too crazy, because it does take a toll on you, you know.
Sure.
Physical parts of it, you know. Even with this luthier stuff, like I'm constantly on the lookout for any little tips and tricks and methods and techniques, whatever, anything to minimize the wear and tear on my hands.
Right.
Because my hands are pretty sore at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
I'm pulling on strings and I'm just cleaning, you know, if I'm polishing things,
Right.
I'm doing it by hand most of the time, right? Some of it you got to get some heat going, and you know, you're putting a lot of effort into it. So I'm always on the lookout for things that I can do to minimize it. You know, even just like if you're doing like a fret level, for example,
Right.
I'm going to have the whole fretboard taped off. That's 20 minutes of applying tape over and over.
Yeah.
You know, that alone, you know, just kind of like you know, it's tedious. You know, you're gonna be using sandpaper to go over all the frets once you get it leveled.
Right.
When you're polishing the frets, you're getting right into those corners.
Yeah.
You're doing this, you know, 40 sometimes.
It's not something a machine can really do, is it?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing that, you know, on both sides. So however many
frets there are.
Yeah, you know, so whatever the frets are times 2.
Yeah.
Times however many grits of sandpaper you're going to go up.
Right.
You're doing this, you know, and you know, you got to really hang on to that sandpaper. You're doing that hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And it's just your hand cramps up, and it can be a little difficult. So one thing I saw a while ago was a luthier named Ben Crow with Crimson Guitars. He'll take just a credit card, whatever. He'll wrap some sandpaper around it.
Right.
And rather than, you know, doing this, just take the sandpaper and just go along the frets like that. And you get the exact same results in seconds compared to, you know, 10 minutes of each grit of sandpaper doing that right. And it just, you know, it's kind of sounds like a cart and a bike wheel or something, right? When you're doing it. Yeah. But it's just this. And it's so much easier. and you still got to do a bit by hand, obviously.
But it cuts down all the...
Because I when I'm doing it, I go across or with the frets, and then I go across the frets. Yeah. And I usually start at 400 grit sandpaper, and I go up to 2000 grit. I'll micro mesh them, you know, I'll steel wool.
Right.
And then you get into the polishing with Dremel, Dremel tools, polishing compounds, all that stuff.
Right.
There's a lot of steps to getting them to look really shiny.
Yeah.
It's just wear and tear on your hands over time, right? Like good fret level might take you through 2-3 hours, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So anything I can do to just make my life easier, I will do it and get the same results ideally. That's the most important part. It doesn't matter if you're doing it faster if the results suck.
Yeah.
You know, it is one of those things where you have to maintain that white glove final result kind of thing, that treatment. But ideally, find a way to make your life a bit easier along the way doing it. Because it can get pretty, it can be tedious. It can be really hard on the hands after a while. Like I wouldn't want to do more than 2 fret levels in a day kind of thing, right? It's hard on the hands.
Right.
So I'm constantly on the lookout to see if I can find any little thing, you know, to make people's lives easier. And I try to share it in my posts that I make on social media.
Sure.
Anytime I come across something new, I'll be like, hey guys, you know, fellow guitar makers, do this, you know, make your life a lot easier.
I mean, we could talk all day, but there's so many things we could touch.
Yeah.
But before I wrap this up, do you want to just tell how do we get a hold of you if you want to?
Yeah,
You have a Facebook page, obviously.
Yeah, I have Facebook, I have Instagram, and I have my my own website, which I actually just got remade recently, which looks really,
Okay.
really nice now.
I'll put this in the description on the video.
Yeah. It is, all of it is just J. Ellis Guitarworks, so Jellis Guitarworks.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put all that. Check the description in the video, and I'll put all the links and stuff like that in there. And hope you enjoy the video. I can't thank you for
Yeah.
putting up with me for today.
Oh, it's all right.
It's great. I think it's a great side of music a lot of people don't really think about. You just see people playing guitars all the time. You think it's so easy, but there's a lot of work that goes behind it.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes to get the musicians on the stage and get them in a state where they can put on that performance. There's hours and hours and hours of work that goes on behind the scenes that people don't even think about. This is just one little thing of it,
Yeah.
one little part. In the grand scheme of things, you got your crew and your techs and all those guys on the show on as well. So I'm just making sure the instruments play and sound okay.
Excellent. So J. Ellis Guitarworks. Check it out. Check the description. I'll have links there for you. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.